Hello, it is Laura, and you are watching part 2 of my video, What Happened to William Tyrrell? A Decade of Questions. Now, today is another long one, and there's going to be more of me in the edits, jumping in and adding in information, so please do get ready for that. I really do appreciate you being here. This is my very first case. This is the very first video I've ever filmed and put together and edited, so I appreciate your patience with me while I figure that out. But by all means, let's get into it.
So the next person I wanted to talk about was Frank Abbott. So Frank Abbott was another gentleman that was living about 8 kilometres away from Benaroon Drive at the time of William's disappearance, I believe in the area of a place called Herons Creek. So Frank Abbott was a known pedophile. He ended up spending 16 years in prison for sexual misconduct with 3 children under the age of 7.
Hello, it is Editing Laura here again, and I do just want to butt in to say that I was actually incorrect about the charges against Frank Abbott. So it was actually that he was sentenced for the sexual assault of 3 children, the youngest being 7, not 3 children under the age of 7 that I had mentioned before. That doesn't make it any better, but I did just want to clear that up. Also, I do have a video here of a friend of Frank Abbott's, an interview with him, and it just reminds me of how much of a disgusting human being Frank Abbott is. And I really believe this man could be capable of having done something to William Tyrrell. I know it wasn't long after William Tyrrell's disappearance that he was put in prison, but yeah, I'm just curious about the investigative process around Frank Abbott at the time and whether they're still interested in him, because he just really seems like someone who is more than capable of doing something horrible to a child.
Ending friendship was shattered when Frank Abbott was convicted in 2017 of the sexual abuse of multiple children. He's gone from being a friend of yours and a friend of your family and someone you trusted and liked. How did you come to know that Frank Abbott was in fact a pedophile?
On the day that he was convicted at the district court in Sydney, I rang his solicitor and he said he's got 16 years for molestation of children. And I was shocked. I felt sick and I spent 3 days in bed.
Tell me about any conversations you've had with Frank Abbott about William Tyrrell.
I've had plenty. I've asked him numerous times, was he involved in it? And he said no.
Why have you asked him that?
For quite a while, about 3 months, he was always saying, they know where I was on the Thursday. I got my pension out on the Thursday. And after hearing that for so long, I thought I'd look the day up that he went missing. And it was the Friday.
It's the Friday.
And I confronted him over the phone, and he said maybe the police have got their dates wrong. Most people in this community would know where they were on that Friday.
And he hasn't been able to tell you where he was?
No. He's got no movement on his mobile phone for 3 days.
Around that time?
Exactly at that time.
Eventually, police talked to him about his old friend's possible involvement in the William Tyrrell case. And they said something he will never forget.
Police turned up at my place and introduced themselves and wanted some background regarding Frank Abbott. And I said, what's it regarding? They said, William Tyrrell. They spoke to me and they told me that he's the #1 prime suspect in their investigation now.
How did you react to that?
I was shocked.
So this gentleman was just not a very nice character. I think the people that lived around him kind of got that vibe from him that something wasn't quite right. People felt the need to keep their children away from Frank Abbott. He was also suspected of a couple of murders as well, which I'm not going to get into just because they don't really pertain to the case specifically, but essentially he was thought to have killed 2 women in their 30s at different times, but he was never charged for any of these things. So Frank Abbott was also known to quite a lot of people in the area, and another man that he was known to was a gentleman who lived on the same property as him in his own caravan named Jeff Owen. Now, Jeff Owen, at the time of William's disappearance, I believe, was living on this property. He states that he was a handyman, Jeff Owen, and he worked for the Kendall Chronicle, I believe. He also did just odd jobs for people around the town. So Jeff Owen states that sometimes Frank Abbott would accompany him on these jobs. And I'm not sure, again, if Frank Abbott accompanied Jeff to this particular job, but allegedly sometime in early September, the foster grandmother asked Jeff Owen to come out to Benaroon Drive to try and fix her decking. So they were preparing to get this house sold, so I'm assuming it was something to do with that. Now, I don't know if Frank Abbott went out with Jeff. Jeff has since stated that Abbott wasn't a great handyman. He didn't really like bringing him along because his work wasn't quite up to scratch on what he liked to do. So I don't know if he came, but essentially Jeff Owen actually ended up getting sick in early September and then didn't actually go and finish the job out at Benaroon Drive until October, so sometime after William had gone missing. Again, we're not sure if Frank Abbott ever went out, but we know that the time that Jeff Owen went out to the foster grandmother's home, that the kids were not there. William and Tyrrell and his foster family were not at the property at this time. Now, in addition to this, Frank Abbott had another friend, and this friend's name was Raymond Porter. Now, Raymond Porter stated that on the day of William's disappearance, that he may have given a lift to Frank Abbott and William Tyrrell in the car. Now, we don't entirely know this for sure. Again, this gentleman was really physically unwell at the time of giving a lot of these statements. So Raymond Porter did get renal disease and then had to move to a nursing home in Port Macquarie, which is not far north of Kendall. Now, while he was staying there, the police did come out to Raymond Porter multiple times. He had heaps of interviews, and he had mentioned to a nurse that he was just sick of all these people coming to talk to him all the time about this, because he stated to this nurse that all he had done was give his best mate and a little boy a ride. And when the nurse had asked Raymond Porter if he was mentioning, and what he meant was William Tyrrell and Frank Abbott were in his car, that he was giving them a ride, he stated yes, that it was William Tyrrell. And again, these nurses reported this onto the police, but as far as I'm aware, nothing further came of this. Now, another gentleman that is in relation to Frank Abbott, his name is Daniel Parrish. He also lived in the area, maybe on this property at around the same time as Frank Abbott. Now, he said that Frank Abbott would also always blame the death of, or the disappearance of William Tyrrell. He would blame it on Jeff Owens, this handyman that he also lived with. So there is just this weirdness there. We also heard from neighbours in some interviews about how they feel about Frank Abbott, but yeah, there's no solid evidence to connect him to this disappearance. As far as I'm aware, it is incredibly unusual that his friend Raymond Porter would say that he gave him and William Tyrrell a lift. But again, obviously the police have investigated this, and I hope that they've thoroughly investigated this. I'm sure they have, but as far as I'm aware, nothing else came out of this. So now we move on to another gentleman that lived in the area, and his name was Robert Donohoe. So Robert Donohoe was a gentleman who, shortly after William's disappearance, was sentenced for sexually assaulting 3 intellectually disabled men that he had access to through the SES, for whom he volunteered. So again, Donohoe was another really strange character that lived in the area. He also worked at a petrol station, and it is said by his co-workers and people that went to this petrol station that Jeff Donohoe just gave them the ickiest feeling, and that when teen girls kind of came by, they would actively avoid going into the service station, the fuel station, if Robert Donohoe was working. It was also said that Robert Donohoe kept live chickens in his van. Now, as far as I'm aware, this gentleman was homeless, so he was living in his van, but that he was raising his chickens in the van, and he had pipe dreams of selling his eggs at the fuel station. Now, it's unknown if Robert Donohoe was where he was on the day of William's disappearance, whether he was working or not, but it is known that Robert Donohoe often parked up his van very close by to Benaroon Drive at the showgrounds. So again, not really sure there, but I don't think there was anything further that came out of Robert Donohoe. I just know that he was this really creepy, strange man that people really didn't like being around. He also stated that he was involved in the very initial searches for William Tyrrell, as he was part of the SES, but again, there's no further evidence that came out of this. So that's kind of our sex offender list that we're aware of. I know that there was hundreds and hundreds, and actually it was really shocking to the public to find out how many sex offenders were in the area of Mid-North Coast, New South Wales. So yeah, we also did hear about a pedophile ring that may have been operating in the area that potentially Tony Jones, the sex offender we talked about first, was connected to. So this group was called Grandparents as Parents Again. And I also know there was a gentleman named Paul Beckford, I believe, that was also charged in relation to child assault and child abuse charges. So yeah, I'm not entirely sure how this fit in, but as far as I'm aware, this pedophile ring was not found to be connected to the disappearance of William Tyrrell. So then moving on, I do want to get into a suspect or a person of interest the police have for quite some time, and they really ran this one into the ground. And that was the washing machine repairman, Bill Spedding. So let's move on to the washing machine repairman, Bill Spedding. Now, I just want to mention before we get into this, Bill Spedding does not have any sentencing or any formal charges for child sex offences. He is not a registered sex offender. He's not been charged or sentenced to this. So I just want you to keep that in mind, just to be respectful around this, because Bill Spedding was the washing machine repairman that we had discussed earlier in the case. Now, we do know that Jane, on the day of William's disappearance, did call Bill Spedding. We find this out in the coronial inquest. Now, she called him, but he didn't answer, and she left a message asking about the parts for the washing machine. We also know that on the day of William's disappearance, Bill Spedding, the washing machine repairman, he actually attended an assembly for 3 kids that were in his care. So allegedly, Bill Spedding had kids in his care at this point. I don't know whether these were foster children or what, but we know that these kids weren't related to him in any way, so it's potential that they were, but they just haven't been identified for that reason. So essentially, Bill Spedding, on the day of William's disappearance, took the kids to school as he normally would. He then went and met up with his wife for a coffee, and then they went across to get to the assembly for the kids at about 10:30 a.m. and they listened to the kids sing Hallelujah. They also watched one of the children get a principal's award at this particular assembly. Now, there are people who have kind of echoed this sentiment that Bill and his wife were at this assembly. There was one person who said that they remember seeing Bill Spedding on the same day that the kids were singing Hallelujah, but he's not sure if it was that Friday. And another woman said that she was at the assembly on that Friday. She did see Bill Spedding, but she wasn't sure whether they were singing Hallelujah. So again, there's like a couple of witnesses to back up Bill Spedding's story. There is a receipt from the cafe that he and his wife went to prior to the assembly. But essentially, the police really went in on Bill Spedding. They would not let it go. He lived about 20 kilometres away from Benaroon Drive in a place called Bonny Hills. And the police just, from head to toe, ripped apart this man's property. They were looking in all of his like water sources, his storage, his drains, anywhere. So Bill Spedding also allegedly owned a pawn shop. So they went to this shop, they took some computers, some mattresses, things like that. And they didn't find anything essentially that linked him. But I believe the police just had that gut feeling. Obviously, they didn't have any evidence, but they really felt that Bill Spedding had done something to do with William's disappearance at this time. And that was when they charged him again with some historical sex offences against children. Now, Bill Spedding had been charged with these a long time ago, and these charges had been dismissed, but it is believed that the police brought these up again to put some pressure on Spedding and maybe to create an opportunity where they could question him about William Tyrrell's disappearance. But essentially, Bill Spedding in 2015 was charged with these, and then this was all dismissed. Now, I believe in 2019, Bill Spedding also won a settlement of $1.8 million around defamation around this case of William Tyrrell and the fact that the police didn't keep this quiet. And it is really interesting in this case because evidently they keep some people quiet and close to the chest, and the public doesn't know about some of the persons of interest, but others they just broadcast to the world. And I'm wondering if it's just because they are so sure in themselves that this person has something to do with it that they are just happy to blast them through the media. But again, Bill Spedding's life was essentially destroyed. The children that were in his care were removed from his care. And again, I know he was accused of child sex offences, but he was never charged, and he was found not guilty again in a court of law in modern times after William Tyrrell went missing. So This man isn't guilty of anything. He lost the children in his care. Now, there was another news report about them finding a Spider-Man doll in Bill Spedding's car, and they blasted this to the media too, and it just ended up being belonging to one of the kids in his care. And William didn't take any toys with him. You know, when he left the house, he was just wearing his Spider-Man suit as far as we're aware. He didn't take any toys. There's nothing missing. So I don't know why the police just felt the need to blast this bit of information to the public. So I don't know if they just felt like they wanted to give the public something, but yeah, it was really upsetting. And I imagine, you know, given that Bill Spedding hasn't been found guilty of any of these offences, that, you know, his life has been ruined, and he won that settlement of $1.8 million. So I guess the court thinks so too.
Hello, Editing Laura here again, and I forgot to mention about this very strange video that Bill Spedding posted over his social media accounts whilst the police were investigating him, and the media was very suspicious of him, and so was the entirety of Australia. So Bill Spedding did decide to make and post this video just to clear up his account of the William Tyrrell case, but yeah, I do want you to watch this and just keep in mind that he has been cleared. He is a little odd, but just because he's weird doesn't mean he's guilty.
Hello, I'm Bill Spedding. My wife Margaret and I offer the Tyrrell family our sincere commiserations in the tragic event of William's disappearance. I wish to state that I have had no involvement whatsoever in the disappearance of William Tyrrell. I have noted in the media that some events have been reported inaccurately. I wish to clarify those details. I first attended the Tyrrell house on Tuesday the 9th September 2014 to repair a washing machine. I returned to complete the repair of the washing machine on Thursday the 18th September 2014. I have not been in the Tyrrell house or to the Tyrrell house or to the street before, between or after these dates. The media have reported that I was supposed to attend the Tyrrell house on the 12th of September 2014, this being the day of William's disappearance. I wish to make it perfectly clear that this claim is completely false. I did make any indication of any nature which would lead to any person to believe that I was to attend the Tyrrell house on the 12th of September 2014. I appeal to anyone who may have any further information to urge them to contact Crime Stoppers on 1300 333 000. Thank you very much.
So I do feel incredibly bad for this man. I feel like his life was completely destroyed, and he did win his lawsuit. He got his settlement money, but at the end of the day, his life was kind of pulled apart and destroyed by the police, and in the end, he was found to have nothing to do with the case of William Tyrrell. So I think we can clear Bill Spedding from our lists of persons of interest after going over the information that we have, but I did just want to share that video with you. Let's get back to it. Now let's fast forward to about 5 months after William has gone missing. Now, we haven't had anything else significant revealed to us, the public, in this time, but it is around this time that Detective Gary Jubelin is assigned to lead strike force for Xanthe. So Detective Gary Jubelin at the time was quite a decorated and celebrated homicide detective, and he was quite well known for his solving of the case of Matt Levison, who was a gentleman in his young 20s who went missing. Gary Jubelin used a coronial inquest to try and find out what happened to Matt Levison, and as a result of that, he found Matt Levison's body 10 years after his disappearance. So I believe when Gary came into this case, it was hoped that he would be able to do the same thing for the William Tyrrell case. Now, it turned out that this wouldn't be the case, unfortunately, but as he started out, Detective Jubelin, he cleared the parents. He spent a long time, as per Jane, being a bit suspicious of them and really checking them out before deciding that he had cleared Jane and Peter. Now, after he cleared Jane and Peter, he started looking in the same areas that the strike force had already looked, in terms of sex offender registers and suspicious people in the area. And he also talked and was a part of the search for Bill Spedding. Now, after this, we do know that Gary Jubelin did become quite fixated on one person of interest, and this person was Paul Savage. Now, we've already talked about Paul Savage. So Paul Savage is a neighbour. He lives on Benaroon Drive across the road from the foster grandmother's home.
Now, Paul Savage unfortunately does suffer from quite a lot of mental health issues and did have an incident where he had been had an AVO put out against him by a postal worker who stated he had been stalking her. Now, this was witnessed by many people, and when Detective Gary Jubelin went and asked Savage about this specific situation around stalking this postal worker, despite all the evidence given to him that this did happen, Savage continued to deny all of this, and I will include some clips of that here if I can find any.
Stalking, the court heard, despite the evidence, it caused him concern about what else he might have been lying about. Here is a snippet of the police interview where Jubilant questions him about it, and we have beeped out her name again to protect her privacy.
Okay.
I've given you an opportunity to tell me exactly what's gone on with you're saying
nothing.
It's a hot nothing. Okay, I'll just read some things out here. And you wanted time and dates and that type of thing. So on the 21st of September 2012, delivered mail to Savage's mailbox and continued on a mail route. Sometime later, a considerable distance from Savage's address, realised he had followed her to Herons Creek. She was stopped near the entrance to number 40 and Savage approached her and said, "I couldn't let you leave the country without seeing you. Your husband is a lucky man."
Sorry. That's rubbish.
I miss you. Reports that the POI was crying and shaking as he said this.
Yeah, and I was flying over the bloody moon at the same time.
So this is this is just all made up.
That is.
Just all made up.
Yes.
On the 20th of October 2012, Savage approached the vehicle and took hold of her arm, stating, "I want to spend more time with you. We don't get enough time together." Savage was crying and shaking as he was saying this.
Crap.
Another thing that's just made up.
It is. It is.
Now, essentially, Jubilant believed that because Savage couldn't come face to face with the fact that he had committed these stalking offences and the fact that he just kept denying it, Jubilant was really suspicious that Savage, if anything had happened to William while Savage was around, that he might lie about it to cover it up. Now, unfortunately, the stalking charges that he's had against him, as well as his own mental health issues, doesn't make him guilty of this. So Gary Jubelin did just keep on pushing with Savage, and he did go back multiple times for multiple interviews. And we do actually have some excerpts of those interviews, which I will include.
Sitting out there, listening to them play, the area that direction that William was last seen heading was the direction right towards where you were, sitting on the balcony, having your toast or whatever. Someone's taken him, would you agree on that?
Oh, yeah. Well, I must have. He couldn't have. I can't say how he could have got away.
Now, you're out there. No one else heard anything. There was no one else there. What do you think is happening?
The only people around there, from what I know, is his mother, his father, and...
His father was out at the time?
Oh, yeah, I don't know.
So... And you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know if anybody else...
And Heather. And Heather. Now, I'm saying if it's had something to do with it for whatever reason.
There's no way in the world either one of us would hurt the child or any other bloody child.
As part of the ongoing investigation...
Now, Jubilant does theorise that maybe William wandered into Savage's back garden and drowned in his pool, and for some reason, Savage then decided to cover it up. Jubilant also theorised that perhaps Heather, when reversing out of the driveway to head to bingo, had hit William, who was in the street, and then they had decided to cover it up. However, Savage denies this, and there is no evidence to actually suggest that this may have happened. We also know at some point, Gary Jubelin decided to start recording the conversations he was having with Paul Savage on his phone. Now, we know that the house that Savage was staying in, as well as his car, was already bugged by police, but Gary Jubelin states that he was concerned that the bugs would glitch and something would happen with between Savage and himself, where he thought that Savage was quite volatile and aggressive, and he was concerned that something would happen and it wouldn't be caught by the bug, and then Jubelin would get in trouble. So this was the reasoning. Jubelin also states he told other people on Strike Force Roseanne that he was going to do this and it had been okayed. However, this is all alleged, and since Gary Jubelin has been charged with unlawful recording of these conversations, Everyone else in Strike Force, Roseanne, kind of denies that anyone gave him permission to do so. Laura here again. So we do have some of the recordings from the bug devices that were placed in Savage's home, and oh my gosh, I forgot how these made me feel. They do make Savage look incredibly guilty. However, I do want to mention that it is possible that Savage is experiencing some sort of disorder, mental health disorder, where he experiences hallucinations and delusions. So it is possible that because Savage had been constantly interviewed by Gary Jubelin about William Tyrrell, it is possible that his hallucinations then began to directly reflect his reality. So doesn't mean that he's necessarily guilty, although it does make me feel so suspicious of him. That being said, being weird doesn't make somebody guilty. He is a really strange guy, but yeah, I want you guys to take a listen. Tell me what you think, but just do remember that he has been cleared by police.
Investigation, Mr. Jubelin and the police force had numerous devices recording Mr. Savage in both his house and his car during 2017. And those recordings picked up what some may say, very bizarre behaviour from Mr. Savage.
The court heard that Savage had a habit of talking to himself a lot while he was alone, mostly in his house, sometimes in his car. On one of those occasions, it was captured on the listening device in his car straight after that interview with Jubelin that we've just heard snippets of. On that recording, on the listening device that was placed in his vehicle, he was captured saying, "Make sure you don't tell anyone, love. They're right after me. Don't tell anyone, love. Please. They're right after me. Sorry." And the court heard Jubelin believed this could have been in reference to the interview about William that he had just participated in.
Who is he talking to?
The court heard that he may have been speaking to his wife Heather, who had passed away a couple of years earlier, which is something that he did quite regularly. It was captured on listening devices that the court heard he regularly did talk to Heather after she passed away.
Was that audio played in court, or did Mr. Jubelin allege that's what he said?
The recording does exist and it was referred to several times in court, but we didn't actually hear that recording.
It was also alleged in court that Mr. Savage was heard talking to somebody else. Tell us about that.
The court heard that, as I said, Savage used to regularly talk to himself while he was home alone, and one officer who testified at Jubilin's hearing was tasked with listening to him and said that talking to himself was almost constant, in his words. The court heard that on one of those occasions when he was home alone in his house, he was heard talking to someone he described as a little boy, and this is what the surveillance teams reported him saying. "I'm going to run into your property too in Gordon. This is my place. You do what I want. I'm not interested in your bullshit, mate. You're a little boy. You're nobody. You're just a little boy. You're nobody. You do not tell me. I tell you. No way in the world." Now, there was a dispute as to whether or not he said Gordon, because the listening devices often didn't pick up things very clearly, so they couldn't be sure that that is what he said. However, the court heard that Gordon is the suburb where William's foster grandmother used to get off the train when she visited her foster grandchildren and her daughter in Sydney.
So just another addition here for you. Another tactic that Gary Jubelin tried and the Strike Force tried to see if Savage was implicated in the disappearance of William Tyrrell was to place a weathered Spider-Man suit along his normal walking track. The idea behind this was just to see how Savage reacted and if he called the police and see what he did with the suit. I believe the Strike Force also placed surveillance cameras along this bush track in the tree to keep an eye on Savage and see what he would do. Now, on the first day of the suit being placed along Savage's bush path, it was alleged that Savage actually stopped by the Spider-Man suit for a couple of moments but continued to walk. On day 2, however, Savage saw the suit, he paused at the suit, and then he returned home and called the police. Now, when Jubelin was asking and interviewing Savage about seeing this suit, he did challenge Savage and said that he saw the suit on the first day and asked him why he hadn't reported it. Now, Savage actually denies seeing the suit on day 1, and he actually says that on day 2, what caught his eye was a flash of white that he saw. Now, the whole controversy about this flash of white is that on the back of William Tyrrell's Spider-Man suit, which was not originally known to the public before this operation to try and catch Paul Savage was underway, was that there is a white spider on the back of William Tyrrell's suit. Now, because Paul Savage said he saw a flash of white, Jubelin took that to mean that Savage knew about the white spider on the back of William Tyrrell's suit that the public was not made aware of at all during this time. So Jubilant found this very suspicious. However, nothing ended up coming of this, and as far as I'm aware, Savage has been cleared as a person of interest. Now, throughout 2015, the year after William Tyrrell has gone missing, there are multiple appeals, including one on the day that should have been his 4th birthday, the 26th of June 2011.
Today is a significant day for the family of William Tyrrell. Today is William's 4th birthday, and as any family would like to be celebrating, unfortunately William's family can't celebrate on this day, and it's a very emotional day for them. What I would like to do is take this opportunity from a New South Wales Police point of view is to reinforce the appeal that we've put out to the public to come forward if you have information in regards to the disappearance of William Tyrrell. The type of crime we're talking about, and we're talking about human intervention here, is something that if you do have information, there is no excuse for not coming forward with that information.
William's disappearance dives into the hearts of entire communities. Happy little face of a bright-eyed little boy in his Spider-Man costume. Innocent and playful one moment, vanishing the next. Today there should be joy, not despair. Laughter, not tears. Other than bringing him home safe, there is no better gift we can give William and his distraught family than to support the efforts of the New South Wales Police and put our research, voice, determination and spirit behind the Where's William campaign. Somebody knows something, and that somebody can help us and help police bring William home. It's not okay that children can simply disappear. It's not okay that our children are not safe. To the public, he's the missing little boy in a Spider-Man outfit. To his family, William is their real-life little superhero. Let's not give up on little William. Let's bring him home. Together, we can do this. Someone knows something. Someone always knows something. Please don't give up on our boy. Don't give up on bringing William home. Never say never.
Anyone that has any information about the disappearance of William Tyrrell, come forward. You have a responsibility to come forward. A child being abducted is not acceptable. Anyone that has information must come forward.
Despite all of the outcry to the public for assistance and the fact that there was many tips given to police, just nothing came of any of this, and we continued on without really knowing any more information about what has happened to William Tyrrell. Now we are moving forward to September 12th, 2016, and it is around this time, the second anniversary of William Tyrrell's disappearance, that his foster parents were successful in their lobbying to increase the reward for any information regarding the whereabouts of William Tyrrell from $500,000 to $1 million, which at the time in New South Wales was the highest reward that had ever been offered. So this was, again, lobbied for by the foster parents, I believe specifically by Jane. So that's just to be kept in mind too. Now, in August of 2017, nearly 3 years after William's disappearance, it was finally decided by the court that the public could know that William Tyrrell is a foster child. Now, it had been held back as the court felt like it just wasn't necessary for the public to know. They didn't feel like it was necessary for Stacey and Daniel, William's biological parents, for any of their kind of dirty laundry to be aired to the public. And they just felt like they didn't really owe anything to the public at all in regards to this foster care situation. And I know there are contending opinions about this, but really from the idea that, like, from the standpoint that we have so little information on anything about William Tyrrell and what actual information they do have, if there is any more than what I have in front of me, then the fact that he's a foster child, even though it feels like a huge revelation, it really doesn't give us much more information, because we know that the police have already gone down those avenues with the ideas of parental abduction from Stacey and Daniel and things like that. So we know that that's already ruled out. So at this point in the investigation, it doesn't really add any value. In 2018, multiple more searches led by Gary Jubilant are undertaken in Kendall. They research the foster grandmother's home. They're looking around Kendall. They're searching properties like from Bill Spedding and Tony Jones, and they're digging, they're looking around, they can't find anything. And again, nothing is found from any of these searches that is definitively connected to the case of William Tyrrell. So now let's fast forward to March 2019. Now in March 2019, Gary Jubilant, the foster family, everyone's getting ready for the coronial inquest that is soon to start. Now, unfortunately, at this same time, a few weeks before the coronial inquest begins, Gary Jubilant is charged with the unlawful recording of conversations with Paul Savage. Now, allegedly, this has come second to a confrontation that had occurred within Strike Force Roseanne, where, again, allegedly, another member of the Strike Force attempted to attack Gary Jubelin. I believe there was some infighting. It sounds like a lot of egos. Are we surprised? No. But moving on from that, essentially, Gary Jubelin was charged and he was immediately removed from the case of William Tyrrell. Now, the Foster family were outraged. They were so upset. The coronial inquest was about to begin. So the Foster family and biological family and William Tyrrell now go into the coronial inquest without the very person who suggested it in the first place. So Gary Jubelin's been on this case. He's the one that knows the most about it. And now he isn't available for the coronial inquest, which began in June of 2019. So the coronial inquest is where I got all of my information for this case, so I'm not going to go into any more detail because we already have gone over the information that we have. I do want to let you know that the coronial inquest is ongoing. It has not wrapped up as of yet, and we're still waiting to see what comes of this. So in March of 2020, Gary Jubelin is found guilty of unlawfully recording these conversations and effectively loses his job as a detective for the rest of his life. Moving on from this, in 2021, we find out that the police have a new person of interest. They do not disclose who this is. However, they do invite the media to come out and follow them in Kendall, where they are sure and certain and absolutely sure they're going to find something on this day. So they invite the whole media out to come and dig up the garden beds under the balcony of the foster grandmother's home. Now, the Strike Force is working off of the theory that the foster parents have covered up something that has happened to William. They believe that William was playing on the balcony, perhaps has fallen off the balcony, been killed, and the foster mother has then covered it up. So, working off of this assumption, the public soon kind of connect the dots, right? The police have said they don't know, they're not going to share who this person of interest is. However, they are going to take you to the garden bed underneath the foster grandmother's garden, who only the foster parents could have really gotten to on that day.
Something is different about this visit to the sleepy town of Kendall. A police force eventually numbering in its hundreds is arriving armed with purpose and intent. Officers appear to know what they're looking for.
It's highly likely that if we found something, it would be a body. We are looking for the remains of William Tyrrell, there's no doubt about that.
Picking up the scent of finally solving the disappearance of little William Tyrrell more than 7 years ago.
Happy birthday, William.
We were told yesterday they were searching 3 new locations, all based on evidence obtained in the course of the investigation. One of those locations is at the base of the veranda, near where William was last seen playing back in 2014, at his grandmother's house on Benaroon Drive. Sifting through soil and uprooting plants and removing debris, the work is unquestionably meticulous as they search for clues. DNA, clothing, anything at all which will provide answers. But they're extremely confident this time they're looking in the right places.
I don't know who took William, but we're hoping to find out through this investigation.
It's here under this veranda which reveals the new working theory by investigators that the 3-year-old fell to his death.
Oh, it'd be great to get answers. We're all so heartfelt, torn from this.
Neeks Jones is a local up here and was part of the initial search when William went missing.
Every time there's a little boy out in a Spider-Man suit, my own son used to wear it, so we're all pretty, emotional about it.
One suspect is now in the crosshairs of police, having previously been spoken to by detectives, but ruled out.
There is certainly one person in particular that we are looking closely at. I certainly don't want to declare too much because, again, in these cases, particularly during the investigative phase, you do not want to compromise a potential outcome.
That potential outcome is being aided by external specialists. Among them is John Ollie, a hydrologist who is an expert in water and soil displacement. He helped in the retrieval of Daniel Morecambe's remains in Queensland. Today he was working at one of the other 2 locations around a kilometre from the home. And while police haven't found anything substantial today, as you can see, the work goes on. It's painstaking work. They're committed to as long as it takes to try and find out once and for all what happened to William Tyrrell. Police have planned for weeks, but after 7 long years, everyone is hoping the answers come sooner than that.
People have connected the dots here, And then soon after this search, the foster parents are charged with intimidation and assault of a child in their care. Now, I do believe the child they're referring to in this case is William Tyrrell's older sister, Lindsay, who was likely still in their care at this time. And she was immediately removed from the care of the foster parents after these charges were placed, and an AVO was put in place for Lindsay as well. So I believe that was absolutely the right thing to do. Nobody should ever hit a child, but I believe that the police have now taken this tidbit of information, this over 18 months. We have to remember that over 18 months.
Hi, it is Editing Laura here, and I am so sorry. I don't know what I was expecting you to remember about 18 months because I never told you. So what I mean here is that Jane and Peter, the foster parents, their home was actually bugged by the police and their car as well. And that's where they got a lot of this information from. So the point I'm trying to make here is that over this span of 18 months, all they got that was of substance was the fact that the foster carers had assaulted and intimidated the child in their care on 2 occasions.
The police have been gathering this information, and over that 18 months, this is what they've caught, is these 2 instances of assault and intimidation. But they haven't actually caught the foster parents saying anything else about the disappearance of William, aside from the fact that Jane did mention that the police were now suspecting her again. But aside from that, there was no evidence, obviously no evidence that was strong enough to actually connect her. But because she had assaulted this child that was in her care, now the police are saying this is tendency, and that because she has done this, it is also possible that she caused the disappearance of William. Now, I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. I think jumping from A to B is just a really big jump, but I understand why they are suspicious of her now. And I'd be silly to say that the foster parents don't look sus. They do look incredibly sus, but I think that might be by design. Like, I do believe that once Gary Jubelin was kicked off of the case and then it was taken over by David Laidlaw, and the tension started rising between the foster family and the strike force, where the communication wasn't flowing as well. The foster family just weren't happy with the progress that was being made or the communication that was being had. And then the Detective Laidlaw and strike force Roseanne then became suspicious again of the foster parents. So it kind of seems like we are meant to be suspicious of the foster parents now, and we have been since the beginning, but unfortunately there just isn't any evidence. Like, there is no real evidence to connect them, and if there was, I can guarantee you the foster parents would be in jail right now. If there was real evidence, if there was real tangible evidence, more than a gut feeling from the police, more than the fact that she has hit or struck a child in her care, more than that. We need more than that. You can't just say because one thing has happened where she hit them with a wooden spoon that she is now capable of covering up the murder or the accidental death of her foster child. Like, I just don't think those two things are on the same wavelength at all. Not excusing the behaviour of the foster parents. I believe Lindsay being removed from the care and an AVO being put in place, that seems like it was the best thing for Lindsay, and I totally agree with that. I totally don't believe that anybody who is hitting a child should have a child in their care. That being said, I do not think that Jane and Peter did this.
Hello, it is Editing Laura here, and I did sound very confident when I said that thing about not thinking that Jane and Peter are guilty, but the truth is I do flip-flop around on this a lot, and I don't know Jane and Peter. All I know of them is from what I've heard of the interviews, and I think the more I listen to the interviews and the more times that I've listened to the 000 call, I just have more and more doubt that they could have done this. And also the fact that they lobbied for this $1 million reward for him. They've tried to keep this case alive as much as they can and in the media, and they follow up about it constantly. And I just have trouble believing that's the behavior of someone who's guilty. However, that being said, I do have my own theory, and I would like to get into that. But before I do that, I would just like to mention that everything I say here is alleged. This is my own theory. Everyone is innocent until proven guilty, and I genuinely don't have any evidence to suggest that this happened. But just based on the timeline, this is my theory. So I believe at about 9:37 a.m. when that photo was taken of William in his Spider-Man suit roaring on the deck, that was probably one of the last times he was actually visually sighted by his foster mother. I believe that she probably got caught up doing something else. She'd realized it had gotten quiet, and time passes when you're getting in doing stuff. Now we know Jane was at the foster grandmother's home to help her pack. Is it possible she was doing that for a bit? We're not really sure, but
essentially what I believe is that it wasn't 5 minutes. It was probably more like 20, 30, 40 minutes that William was missing before his foster mother noticed. And I'm sure parents can empathize with the fact that, you know, you try, when you do get some peace and quiet, when you think your child is playing and they're safe, like time can pass. And, you know, we see this evident in, you know, parents who find their kids with entire tubs of nappy paste all over their face and all over their bodies, or getting into things in the kitchen they shouldn't be getting into. Like, it happens. We know this. Now, that being said, I believe that the foster mother didn't start searching as soon as she said she did. I think that maybe allegedly she might have actually realized William was missing when the foster father did text, "I'll be home in 5." Now, we know that William and Lindsay had this little tradition where they would run out into the front garden and go and meet Peter when he got home from work. So I'm wondering whether William may have wandered out onto the street. Maybe he was waiting for his daddy. Maybe he started walking down the street and that time starts passing, 30, 40 minutes. It makes sense here why the foster mother, Jane, would then get in the car and start searching, because she would have known that he's been missing longer than 5 minutes, much longer. It's possible that William walked down this road and he came into the path of someone nefarious. We know there are a lot of sex offenders in this region, and I don't know if it's particularly higher than any other region in Australia, but we know that there are a lot in this area based on the police investigation. It's possible that William ran into someone nefarious who had just horrible intentions, and they likely took him in their car, or they took him into the bush and then found a car and got him out of there. And because it took so long for the police to kind of start getting onto the fact that, you know, William may have been abducted, is likely been abducted, that they just got away. And the further and further they got, the more time passed, the less likely it became that we would ever find William. And that's why we haven't found him today. I also believe that it is likely that William did pass away on the day of his abduction, on the day of his disappearance. That is statistically likely. In the case of stranger child abduction, it is noted that in this case, the abductee will be murdered within 3 hours of their abduction. So that's statistically likely. I'd be curious to see, like, where the police have searched kind of about 3 hours in each direction of Kendall. If there's been any bush searches in those areas, I don't know. I also know that the police have seized the foster grandmother's grey Mazda hatchback, it belongs to somebody else now. I know they've searched it again for DNA, etc., working on the idea that perhaps the foster mother moved William's body, but I don't believe anything came of this. I know they tried to charge her with moving a corpse, but again, nothing came of this. So yeah, that's kind of where we are at the moment with that. But yeah, unfortunately, it is very likely that if William Tyrrell was abducted by a stranger, that he did pass away on the day that he disappeared. I believe that the police and the strike force, now that they've been taken over by Laidlaw, I believe that they really want the foster parents to be guilty, and they really do believe that they are, but they just cannot find the evidence to connect them to this. And unfortunately, they made themselves look like idiots, basically digging up this flower bed under the grandmother's house, stating they were definitely going to find something, when of course they didn't. And they also went as far as to say that these areas hadn't been searched, which they definitely had. And there had been cadaver dogs at the very beginning that had come out to the foster grandmother's home and the general area, and it hadn't alerted on anything at that time. So I don't imagine that, you know, 8, 9, 10 years later, they are going to find anything else significant, including a body that may have been there. So just jumping back to the story, Jane and Peter had been charged, and they subsequently go on in 2022 to plead guilty, not guilty to their charges. It is found after this court session, that they will both be found guilty of intimidation, and Jane will be found guilty of 2 counts of assault of a child. So between 2022, the court date for the foster parents, and 2024, when they were sentenced, the police then tried to charge the foster parents with lying under oath. This was in regards to Jane and this wooden spoon allegation that she ended up being found guilty of. But essentially, the police were kind of using this tactic again. We saw it with Bill Spedding, where they're bringing up his historical sex offence charges. Now, they were using this opportunity because they wanted to put some pressure on Jane and Peter to get some more information about the disappearance of William. Unfortunately, this did not work for them because the judge just couldn't see the relevance of anything to do with William Tyrrell to the case of her lying about this other child. So this didn't work out for them, and they didn't get any more information, and all of the charges of lying were dismissed. But in 2024, this year, in March, we found out that both of the foster parents were both put on 12-month community corrections orders, which meant that they are doing some sort of community service, I guess, for the next 12 months. Now, they have both appealed these sentences since, but nothing has happened as far as I'm aware. Now, that all happened in March earlier this year. As far as I'm aware, nothing further has been revealed about the case of William Tyrrell. The coronial inquest remains ongoing. As far as I'm aware, the case is open, but we are rapidly kind of gaining on the 10-year anniversary since William went missing, and I'm curious to see whether there are any changes in the case and whether this case will continue as an open case or whether it will become a cold case. I really hope it doesn't, because I believe that the families, the biological foster family, everyone, Australia deserves to know what happened to William, but also William deserves for his story to be told. He deserves to be laid to rest. It has been 10 years. We do recognise at this point that it is incredibly unlikely that William is still alive, and all we can really do is remember this bubbly, excited little kid and just try and keep his memory alive, try and keep the idea of him alive, so we hopefully find him one day. Maybe someone will come across him. Maybe someone will find his body in a random day in a random place, and maybe it will be closer than we think. But unfortunately, the chances of ever finding William alive are incredibly slim, and even if we did, it wouldn't be the same William Tyrrell that the foster family had in their care 10 years ago. It'd be a completely different person. So William would be 13 years old at the time of this recording, and we are nearly at the 12th of September again, which means we are reaching the 10-year anniversary of his disappearance. So I do just want to take this time to remember William. I do encourage you to discuss in the comments about what you think may have happened, but I would like you to keep it respectful. I also want to call you to action if you or anyone you know has any information about where William Tyrrell went on the 12th of September 2014, or any information at all that you think could be helpful in this case. Please contact Crime Stoppers. I'll pop the number on the screen now. There is also the Finding William Tyrrell, the official page, which I will also link down below for you to look at. But for now, let's just remember William Tyrrell as the bubbly, happy boy that we know he was, and hope that one day we have the answers to what happened to him.
Hello. Yeah, I'm taking a video. Look at you. Have you finished?
No, I did it.
Lick your fingers, lick your hand. Happy birthday, William.